From vision to action. And it's so exciting to have this new show on. We're going to be talking about climate change, but we're going to be talking about leadership. And as I have said before, everything rises and falls on the shoulders of leadership. It's a leader's job to see more and see more before. Nobody follows a leader who doesn't know where they're going, what they're doing, right? And the reality is that if you're sitting in a room and somebody knows more than you do, and somebody sees things before you do, you're no longer the leader in that room. But the great thing is that in this room, this virtual rooms, we have some great leaders who are directly involved in sustainability and in climate as well, but more specifically, they're leaders. So, first of all, we have Tom Schout. Can you introduce yourself briefly, please?
Well, my background was in tech, startups in software development, and helping with what one calls agile transitions, agile methodologies, how to help companies solve complex problems, like banks shifting the entire IT system, really big, hairy problems. And I was doing well. And actually, the thing was, as a consultant, I was feeling like the better things were going, the more panic I felt that I was kind of barking up the wrong tree, because I felt that if this agile thing is so good, why am I spending my time helping banks and insurance companies instead of using the processes and methods from the agile toolbox to the most important and most complex of all problems, the climate transition? So I sort of shifted career completely a couple of years ago and went cold turkey with my clients that I had and just pretended that Sweden was my client, the Swedish government was my client, and started building a situation room, what we call a situation room for Sweden's transition. So that's my background and my running up for me. And I think I follow. There are many people like that I worked in one field doing something, but then beginning to feel like, okay, I have this skill set, but I'm just applying it to something that just is not important enough, and I want to apply it to something else.
It's interesting because people do want to transcend. And when we see a situation like what we have right now with climate change, then, you have the opportunity to transcend, and you have the opportunity to do something that's really going to make a difference beyond yourself, beyond your borders, beyond your generation. And this is what it's about. And new leadership is about building that empathy, beyond time and beyond borders, transcending the individual, which is amazing. And we're seeing this shift, and it's great to have you on. Now, Nuria, it's lovely to have you. You're all the way in La Palma, in Canary Islands. So welcome, and could you please introduce yourself briefly?
Thank you. And thank you for having our project here also. I feel very reflected with Tomer's story, actually. I am physicist from the ground. And I was working also in consulting, and I was working in Stockholm. And then I felt the call of the island, we could say like that. There happened many things, right? Then I end up here in La Palma, Canary Islands, exactly at the moment that the grassroots movement was starting to organize. And from then to now, so many things have been happening, have been amazing. Real change from grassroots. So I'm very happy to have had this island call this year.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for being here, Nuria. And now we have Kate Garvey, all the way in London. Lovely to have you on board. Kate,
thank
you.
You.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. So my background is more in the political world, in the campaigning world. So I think I've always been in this world, behind the scenes, fixing, trying to organize and communicate big issues. And it was during this time, both in government, in the UK government, and then afterwards, where I saw the importance of the Millennium Development Goals, a set of goals, 8 goals that were set in 2000 to help halve poverty and fix some of the issues in the development issues and put some targets on them. And we saw, I definitely felt that they were a useful tool, but they were very much behind the scenes. That people, when the Make Poverty History campaign happened in 2005, in a sense, they were the issues that were the Millennium Development Goals, and yet that was really a policy negotiation behind the scenes. And yet when I campaigned on the Millennium Goal 5 with an amazing set of women to help reduce maternal mortality by 70%, it was the least likely goal to be achieved. We realized that we could use that fact and the stats behind it and the goal itself to empower and motivate people. And we had some great success back in 2007, 2008. And it was my co-founder, Richard Curtis, film director, who made the point to me when the new set of sustainable development goals were being agreed in 2015. If we could make them think, we could tell goals, people should know about them. It is their right. They should understand what the goals are, and therefore leaders will be held more accountable and perhaps deliver on them better. So we set out through Project Everyone to tell everyone about the goals. It was over ambitious, but we did reach quite a few people in 2015 with the help of some great communications, people like Beyonce and the Pope who launched the goals, but also then working with schools, teachers around the world, with the UN itself, which has got massive reach, and telecoms agencies, internet entrepreneurs, in social media to communicate the goals. Now we need to get them actioned. So we're about to start a big push for a 2020 campaign to set up a decade of delivery so these goals are achieved by 2030.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thanks so much, Kate, for being here. And we'll get to that in a little more detail in a bit. And of course, now we have Paul Dickinson. Hello, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so sorry that, I'm sure mistakes on my side have caused me to be late, but I'm here now and great to talk to you.
Fantastic, Paul. So, Paul, welcome to the program, From Vision to Action. And could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and CDP?
So I'm going to save the story about myself, but CDP is 19 years old. I set it up with a whole bunch of other people. And we're most famous for representing, I would say, very large numbers of investors. In fact, most of the world's investors now participate in CDP, as well as a lot of big companies. And those investors, on behalf of those investors and on behalf of big companies, we basically persuade, we have kind of forced, I can't think of another word, the biggest companies in the world to report on their greenhouse gas emissions to us, to our website, and that's made available to the market. So I would encourage everyone on the call, we're a charity, so this data is all free. I would encourage everyone on the call to go to cdp.net, and there you will see data from 8,000 companies, 700 cities all over the world, talking about the action they're taking on climate change and also water use and the drivers of deforestation.
Fantastic. Well, thanks a lot, Paul. And Paul, I'm going to start with you. So you already spoke a little bit about CDP, and I'm very interested in how you're going to, with TCFD, how you're going to move from reporting into action, how you expect people to do that.
Well, I mean, TCFD, we actually redesigned all of CDP around TCFD in 2018. And, reporting into action, CDP is this giant data exchange. As I said, I would encourage everyone to look at it. But what does that mean, reporting into action? I'm going to give just one example. The other day, or about a year ago, I looked at McDonald's response to CDP, and they reported from the purchases of their product, which is basically, meat and potatoes, 29 million tons of CO2, which is bigger than British Airways and Irish Airways and Iberian Airways all combined, right? So what does that mean? That means there's crazy emissions, for example, in beef, and CDP shows us that. So who knows? There are incredible new companies starting up, food scientists coming up with incredibly new products that taste better than the old ones. And there's an innovation. Every restaurateur, everyone running hospitality everywhere in the world can take that on and can take action. So that's just one example of how we can use data on greenhouse gas emissions to change business plans. You can look even at things like great emissions from travel, and actually getting those emissions reduced by people taking holidays or using hotels in the countries they're in and not needing to fly across the other side of the world. There's actually a million different versions of the kind of actions you can take, but we think data drives changes in behavior by grasping opportunities. And just to say, because I'm not where I'm meant to be, my battery might run out at any second, but I got another phone and I'll rejoin you.
Okay, fantastic. Just another quick one here is CDP grades companies, and you have A grade, yeah? And it's really difficult to get to an A grade company. Now, my question is about leadership within those companies. What in the leadership and the vision within those companies sets them apart from the rest?
It's really just thinking about corporate strategy, developing products and services that the people want, low carbon alternatives. And I think, it's an incredible thing when you have 1.5 million school children striking, saying, we're being discriminated against. Extreme weather all over the world is changing the way the whole public thinks about life and how people invest and how they spend their money every day. That's the great democracy. That's what's really changing the way the world at speed, faster than politics ever could, faster than governments ever could. So the really leading companies are redesigning their products and services around the low carbon solutions. And then they're selling those to people, just like electric cars are better than petrol cars, just like renewable energy is better than fossil energy, just like, plant-based foods are increasingly better for your health and for the environment than meat-based. And insulation is better than letting the heat go away. And actually, every single problem with greenhouse gas emissions is a business opportunity. And the A graders are grasping those opportunities, making money and growing their businesses, solving the problem for everybody.
Fantastic. Well, that's really very, I'm going to just say it the way I say it. That's right on, man. That's really cool. I like that. I really do. And it's interesting how, it's interesting to see how data actually does drive decisions. It's very interesting. And I'm going to want to look at this myself. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to keep an eye on it as well. And yeah, as Paul said, encourage everybody to do the same. Now, Tomer, we've already talked about business aspect and data aspect of it. Now let's talk about processes. So, Tomer, now we're going to talk to you. I'm just going to try to get you into my view because I don't see you. There you are.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I want to talk to you about the data part. Of course, agile leadership is a big thing now. And putting it into practice in climate action, that's pretty amazing. A lot of startups are using agile technology. A lot of startups are trying to be lean as well. And I understand your process is it goes from product ownership to powerful visualizations, and then of course the most leadership-driven one, which would be the hypothesis-driven development. All this requires a lot of vision. It requires business values. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I would say, the agile toolbox is a lot of things, and to try to describe it easily becomes buzzwords. But in the end of the day, as with all processes, it's pretty sort of sound, simple practices. And one way to see it is what you're really doing is trying to create feedback loops that are much shorter. Like if we're talking about abstract danger in 20 years, that's easy to understand with your mind, but you don't really get it. And the same thing if you're driving a software company, if you have a release three years away, nothing is going to happen. So what it's really about is bringing things closer, that your next step to be able to find and identify small steps and create feedback loops to show how we are reaching those steps. So the same with the climate. What we're trying to do is instead of having enormous, because we have all this data and that's fantastic, but we're trying to, with our methodology, trying to sort of bring that data so it's much more graspable, so that we, instead of measuring Sweden's CO2 emissions in total and seeing how we're going, which is the wrong direction, we're seeing how many electric vehicles were sold this quarter, how is in public transport doing this quarter. So actually creating a rhythm, which is not 10 years away, because that's not going to change people's behavior. It's rhythms that is as short as possible. So on a national level, on a quarter, even monthly level, sometimes they're succeeding to get data. So of all this stuff with management and how to sort of use visualization to change behavior, because that's what we're really doing. We're taking this data, which we need, but then trying to create visualizations with that, which change decision-making processes, change decision-making behaviors. And in the sense of decision-making, nudging through visualization. So in a sense, so for me, when I started sort of understanding CDP, that was like all that massive amount of data. That's like the like chunks of gold for us, where we can suddenly bring that in and start thinking, okay, how do we break this down into business opportunities, as Paul was saying?
Oh, this is great. I like that, and I like your clarity on it. It's quite refreshing, to be honest. Okay, now, how do you chunk down the roadmap into manageable, actionable pieces?
Is it, do you say, shall I just do a sort of super fast, just show it?
Please do.
We could do it. That's like a picture says more than 1,000 words, and animation says more than 1,000 pictures, I think somebody said. So I'll do really fast here and describe. So in essence, we're talking about this as the situation room for the climate. And if you think of a movie where there's some big crisis going on, the meteor reaching the world or whatever, there'll often be a situation room. And that's basically a room where you're collecting all the data, trying to get an overview and making fast decisions. It's a room with intense activity where people are talking to each other, they're making decisions, and then activity will be intense until the crisis is solved. We are trying to create that situation room based on all this public and gathered data. So for Sweden, for example, I'll just do a very fast dive down. We have Sweden's emissions. We have the potential solutions for solving them, the solution space. We have indicators showing how we're doing, and all the policies and commitments in place now to solve the problem. So for Sweden, I dive down here and I see we have transport, industry, culture, and the width here of the columns show how much of our emissions come from the different areas. Transport being basically 1/3 of Sweden's emissions. And you look at passenger transport, nearly 2/3 of transport, which comes to everyone's surprise all the time. That's interesting. And then we look at the solutions. Well, we're going to solve this by reducing energy usage and by renewable fuels. Again, people will be surprised here that renewable fuels is actually a smaller part. It's not electricity that's a solution, but things that we call transport efficient society, as in reduced transport by car, basically moving to other modes of travel, such as increased proportion of public transport. Bang. And I go now here to a graph where the green line shows how we should be doing in Sweden to reach our goals to be basically a fossil-free transport sector by 2030. And the black line there showing how we're actually doing. We're 80% off target. And then here I can dive down and see all the different policies and actions in place, approved and completed, but not yet going through Parliament, ongoing, and suggested regulations. And I can dive down all the way and see what they are. So that's the way. You can basically dive down into any sector of Sweden's transition and find all these transition indicators and see how we're doing. And our theory of change is we want to be able to show how we're doing really often, like on a monthly or quarterly level. So we are not talking about we have to be fossil free by 2030. We have to be here in half a year.
Short and actionable, of course. And that, of course, drives things through the emotions.
And it makes it less abstract. It drives it through emotions. You can't hide behind it. Yeah, we're going to fix it later. So it sort of forces what we call sprints. It sort of forces things to come closer, and also the gaps become clearer. I think there should be more red flashing lights on this indicator, sort of on this panel, sort of metaphorically, to be even closer now when you see it that Sweden actually, although we're trying to be best in class, we're way behind schedule already.
Yeah, it's interesting to see this graphically. And one day I would like to talk to you about how you reduce the work in progress when it comes to something so big, you know, because I can just imagine the size of that Kanban board. I'm telling you that right now. You know? Okay, so now I'd like to switch over to Nuria. Nuria, you've been working with Toma, and of course we have this really smooth transition today, and it's nice. We go from big data with tons of gold for Tomer, yeah, and now he developed a system that you can use. You're currently using. Can you tell us what your experience is with that, and what your vision is within your island? Of how you want things to work out, not just in terms of the system that you're using, but in the project that you currently have.
Yeah, maybe I can introduce a little bit the project, so the context, so we understand it. Like we have talked about data, processes, and now we are working with people, right? And we think people is the most important in order to want to do things. If you don't have the people wanting to do things, then nothing else is important, right? And this project, I'm really in love with this project that I'm involved now, because it's very nice how everything went. It started as grassroots, and it went slowly. We have 14 municipalities in the island and one island council, and it's about 80,000 inhabitants. So it was village by village talking to everyone. And then the first time in history in this island, it was consensus from all politicians and all municipalities about a document that was produced by people that we want to decarbonize the island and how we want to do it. It's just not changing technology. We want to change also how things are done. We want people to get empowered. We want the economy to become alive with all this changing. So we want bigger change than just talking about change of technology, right? And this has been a very nice project. And from 1 year ago, it was, yes, the Cabildo, which is the Island Council, started embrace this for real. So we are two people from the social movement actually working inside the public administration, which is a very, very powerful thing. We are inside and outside at the same time, kind of. So we are grassroots, but within the public administration. From then, lots of things have been happening, amazing things. We have all the telescopes up here in the island, and we say that stars get aligned all the time. We don't know what's happening, but it's really amazing. In February, the European Commission selected us as one of 6 pilot islands in the Clean Energy for EU project. Clean Energy for what's it called? Yeah. I don't remember. Clean Energy for EU Islands, right? Project. And that means that we are kind of the front runners, right? We test things, and then we see if they are working, other islands can, and even mainland can take over. If not, we can learn something about it also. And what this project means is that we are writing a clean energy transition agenda that is as much participated as possible. And we felt that documents, since we have so diverse islands, we have from astrophysicists to people that don't know how to write almost, how we can create an agenda that really participated, that everyone believes in it with the document. And then we found out about Climate View project, and we felt it fit perfectly because it's very easy for everyone to understand. You don't have to have a high education to understand the visuals of it. People get it instantly what we are doing. And that was very important for us. So what the process that we are doing now, we are starting actually with the workshops, and we are involving absolutely everyone. More than 100 organizations in the island have signed that they want the decarbonized island. I think it has been very important for us to create trust in the process. We have been working a lot with this, that people feel that it's also their project. It's not our project anymore. It's very broad now. And I can explain something because I think it was very, very interesting and fun. I got a call of someone was very angry because he saw someone else signing the pledge that was doing less than him. So he should be even more than the other, right? So now we have created this that people really wants to be in because they trust the process. And Climate View is helping us to, as Tomer was saying, taking a very abstract thing, because when you talk about climate change, it's very abstract, to put it into pieces that everyone can understand. And our work now is to divide this work that everyone has to do, coordinate everyone, and see what's happening.
Now, when you started this, I can imagine that it was difficult to go into businesses and they have the business buy-in, right? How did you achieve that?
Sorry, you said the what?
Business buy-in. How did you achieve the business buy-in? Because I can imagine it would have been difficult in the beginning, to get people in businesses, business owners and companies to actually say, okay, well, I'm in.
Yeah, well, I think it has been very interesting. You have your mindset, you think that this one will be easy and this one will be difficult. And the reality has shown that it was not like that. People that we thought, oh, this will never, they are in, and the way around, even people that we thought this will really, it has been much more difficult. So our idea in the beginning, it was to try to create as broad as possible. So the people that were signing the pledge could be from very different areas. So no one could say, oh, this is something that the ecologists are doing, or some type of business are doing, or some type of. So we tried to create that it was very broad, and we took some companies also. We talked to them more. We took more time to talk to them, and they it was easier than we thought. And also I have to say, of course, we are a social movement, which means that it's not only the 2 or 3 people that are working in the project that are doing that. We had all these ants all over the island talking to people and convincing them why that was important. So when we get over the 4th thresholds, then everything just run by itself.
And like I said, everything rises and falls on the shoulders of leadership. And if you can duplicate leadership, it will be amazing. So I'm going to have a challenge for you. I want you to think over the next few weeks, and I'm going to be in touch with you personally. I want you to think how this can be scalable in terms of the leadership that you yourself and your team have shown. How this could be scalable, not only to other islands, but to the entire world. Are you up for that challenge?
Yeah. I don't know. I think this is something that you cannot, it's passion, right? When we're trying to put, now the project is growing, so we need to add more people. It's not easy to find the people that would do it anyway, even if they were not paid. So it has to come from the inside out.
Yeah, and so we move from grassroots and we go up towards policy and the movements that combine policy, grassroots, and everything in between. And for that, we're going to talk to Kate. Thank you so much, Nuria. And I'm going to be personally in touch with you in the next couple of weeks. Fantastic. So Kate, tell us, what needs to happen now? You've already explained a bit about your project, but very interested in what needs to happen now and what is realistically actionable today.
Well, I think it is an important time. We are nearly 5 years into the goals adoption. That was 2015. So just to recap, I'm sure everyone does know, but there were 17 goals agreed by 193 leaders in 2015. And effectively, they were to end poverty, fix climate change, and end inequalities. Huge, ambitious, universal, interconnected in a way that the previous goals I talked about before were much more focused on the development side of things. So really ambitious, and they really are to end poverty. And we're not doing great. And yet we have seen from leadership, from young leaders, from businesses who have opened themselves up to trying to adopt the goals and achieve the goals in a way that when I started was not the case at all. And to an extent, sort of policymakers and politicians, a sense that they do want to take these goals seriously, and to use them to try and help deliver on the actual themes and policies behind them. So we do believe there is an opportunity, and 2020, which will be a decade away, feels like the right time. There are some key political moments in all the different big policy areas. So whether it be the COP and the Ocean Summits, whether it be the health summits from Gavi Nutrition for Growth to Global Fund, or on the inequality side and the women's movement that is really taking off. There are key areas where these big policy commitments and changes that need to happen can take place. On the data side, as Thomas said, there is so many more tools that are available. There needs to be more, and we're trying. We need to. Thomas and I talk, but we need to find a way to turn the data into not just accessible for policymakers, but also visualized to help behavioral change, as Thomas referenced, for individuals as well. That's the big challenge. We're looking at creative ways to do that, particularly in 2020. And then there are cultural sporting events from the Olympics to the Dubai Expo to Global Citizen that use the force of their great reach to communicate the goals, which is going to be super exciting. And we need to capitalize on that. But that will only happen if the UN and world leaders take this opportunity, see what young leaders are doing, see what businesses are doing, see what a lot of these big events are doing, and take the advantage. We hope next September 2020, to start annually measuring and being accountable for the goals for the next 10 years. And that will take a shift in approach, but we believe it is possible. So this September from the UNGA, which will happen in 2 weeks' time in New York, and onwards, we will be using every opportunity from grassroots, civil society, businesses, faith leaders to get that message home that it is possible. Progress is possible. We've seen it happen. We can achieve these goals, but only if we triple our efforts now and find really creative, innovative ways of making those changes and holding leaders to account, particularly at these key moments.
So within your organization, for what I can tell, it's actually quite numerous in people. You have some key leaders in there, I take it. What inspires them? What moves them? And do you have a joint vision?
So it's interesting. I mean, Project Everyone is a set of creative communicators and specialists that we try and set up events, movements, communities for them to do their job, or to bring it together and shine a spotlight on what other people are doing. So we don't run that. We just try and creatively tell the stories, show the data, make the linkage to the goal. So some of the great things, the fun things we've done is to look at International Women's Day or International Day of the Girl and look at all the great organizations that have campaigns around this, find a creative spotlight that will reach the public and a distribution net mechanism to increase the understanding of the issues they're trying to promote. So we work with Google, we work with creative people like MJ Delaney, and then with the grace and generosity of people like Beyonce to use their songs. In a year or so ago, we used Beyonce's song Freedom to tell the story of how you had to change for girls in order to achieve the goals. And that was put on the Google homepage with all the UN agencies and big international NGOs supporting it with a call to action. So the reach was huge. It was a great fun video to watch, and it was getting out that important message that the global goals are for girls, and we can only achieve them if we direct it through them.
Okay, well, Kate, that's all we have time for today. Thank you, everybody, so very, very much. And well, you know, this is from vision to action, and we really need to get to that actionable part. In life and climate, we've got three choices and three choices only. When we have a choice to make, we either mitigate, adapt, or suffer. And it's up to leadership to tell us what to do. So if you believe you're a leader, go out there, mitigate, help people adapt. But let's stay away from that suffering. Let's create a vision and let's activate ourselves. Let's get into action. Thank you so very much. Love talking to you all. It's been great. It's been inspiring and really educational. Thank you so much. And well, we'll be talking to you individually soon. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.